Item 11, parole, Jenny. Oh, sorry, Julie. I can see parole just watching over you. Because we have a presentation. Oh, perfect. Thank you. If you press talk in the front there. Yeah, perfect.
Cool. Kia ora koutou. Thank you for the opportunity to give a short presentation on the revised Resource Recovery Network strategy. We'll take it as read, that you've read the full report, which outlines the expansion and optimisation of the network for the next 10 years. And just to make the point that this outlines a basic framework, which is affordable and deliverable. It's not the end point, but it's just the next stage of development. So the original strategy was adopted in October 2014, and that had the goal of achieving 12 community recycling centres by 2024. And we are well on track to achieving this, which is really exciting. So the revised strategy proposes to build on this by developing a further 9 community recycling centres across the region and 2 resource recovery parks by 2031. Okay, just a snapshot of where we're at. We have 9 operating community recycling centres across the region. They're operated by social enterprises and they're embedded in the communities in which they operate. So the operators are really passionate about their communities and they're also passionate about zero waste. So Waiuku in the south was our first community recycling centre, and since then we've developed across the region up to Wellsford and Warkworth, which is one of our newer community recycling centres, and also out to the Hauraki Gulf Islands in Aotea and Waiheke. The recycling centres are where they are because that's where land was available, so they're often on old transfer sites. And some of the challenges for us is how do we bring those community recycling centres more into the urban areas. And the 3 central local boards will know how challenging that process is to get something that is in the central city area, and we've worked very closely with them over the last 6 or 7 years to get a site at Waioria, Western Springs. That site now has resource consent and we're hoping that it'll be operational by the beginning of next year. Yay! So I really want to acknowledge Councillor Coombe and Councillor Casey and others that have really journeyed with us on this, so thank you. We are also, with Onehunga, we have also got resource consent for Onehunga, which is great, and we also hope to see that operational by the beginning of next year. Also, for the south, there has also been another journey with our south local boards and acknowledging Councillor Dalton, who is here, Councillor Dalton, and the passion that the Manarewa local board has brought to this, and other local boards, Tara and Howick. So we're in the process of negotiating with a potential advisor for a community recycling centre, and we should know the outcome of that shortly, and all going smoothly, which we anticipate it will, that should be operating in the middle of this year. So we'll let you know as soon as that negotiation process is completed. Okay, so oh, I've got the slide. Okay, so just looking at some of the achievements, I think the magic of the community recycling centres is it's not just about diverting waste, although that is their primary function, but it's also about achieving wider social and economic and environmental outcomes. And they also really help support behaviour change for communities in which they're based. So over the last financial year, 5,200 tonnes was diverted from landfill from the 9 community recycling centres for reuse and recycling. They've created 80 full and part-time jobs. We've saved 823,000 of carbon dioxide equivalents, and that's just measuring green waste and timber, which is something that we can easily measure at the moment. There's been thousands of hours of volunteerism, but also those community recycling centres have become community destinations. They're often vibrant community hubs, fostering resilience and wider community outcomes. And I think, I was up at Maharangi Waste Buses up in Warkworth and Wellsford yesterday, and just looking at the challenging piece of land that they operate on and the minimal infrastructure and all that they've been able to achieve. So just a little bit about Laurie Road and Rusty Brook in Wellsford and Warkworth. They set up 18 months ago, and in that time they've set up a site for maximum resource recovery, including a container shop, which is fondly known as the Mahu Mall. They have signage in te reo in English, and it's all decorated, the area, with artificial recovered flowers, so it has that real community feel. When they first opened up, residents came along expecting just to dump their rubbish and leave. Now most of them come with their loads pre-sorted. They know the drill, they know how to recognise and separate resources from rubbish and where to put them. And so they've really built that strong community feel. Customers show up sometimes with ice creams for the workers, recognising how hot and dusty it is where they work, or with coffees over the winter. They're also well supported by their local businesses, and the local digger company helped them out when they had problems with their digger. And they've also been the recipient of private donations. They've developed a collaboration with the Matakana market to compost all their food waste. Previously, the market sent it down to the south. And now this is extending to other businesses and residents, and they've got a food composting facility on their Laurie Road side. They've got heaps of volunteers and are about to recruit a volunteer coordinator, and have also a destination for local school tours. So in contrast, Helensville's been operating for 5 years. They've worked out that they've paid 1.2 million back into the local economy through wages and purchasing of local goods and services. They've provided placements for 193 locals serving community hours from corrections, some who've gone on to be regular volunteers. And they're a well-loved community hub with an innovation edge, contributing back to their community through their community enrichment program. They also had the eldest volunteer, who at 90 was a regular contributor, and unfortunately he passed away last year. So our community recycling network has also been recognised nationally through attracting central government funding. So we've received 2.2 million from Ministry for the Environment for Onehunga, and also delighted that we got 10.6 million for Shovel Ready to develop the existing sites, which have been quite basic. So the revised strategy was developed in collaboration with our community recycling centre operators. The success of this network really relies on that partnership between council and the operators and the community, and it's achieving more. We can achieve more together than we can individually. So it was also workshop with the IENS Mana Whenua Forum and also with local boards, and I'd just like to take the opportunity to acknowledge the huge support for the community recycling centres and RRN that we've received from local boards over the years, both financially but also in support and looking for sites. So in the revised strategy, we're seeking funding for additional sites and also ongoing operational costs for the existing community recycling centres, and this is included in the long-term plan package. Thank you very much.
Kia ora, thank you very much. Councillor Newman, you have the first question.
Thank you. A number of questions from me. Appreciate the presentation. I just wanted to come back to the issue of the plan in 2014 was for 5 years operational funding, and that these centres would become financially self-sufficient, sustainable, they'd be able to wipe their face. What's been proposed here is a continuation of the funding because they are not yet financially sustainable. I assume that most of the funding that makes them sustainable actually comes at the gate fee. Is that correct?
Comes from the gate fee. It also comes, all of the community recycling centres have reuse shops, so that's a huge contributor to their profitability. and it also comes through other businesses that they do as well. So it comes from a range of sources.
To make these particular centres financially sustainable, are they going to have to move on the tariffs at the gate?
Not necessarily, and I'll get Julie to talk in more detail, but particularly with container return schemes and product stewardship schemes also provide another opportunity for income generation. So,
yeah, we're in a kind of a really interesting point in time at the moment where a lot of the things that we've been hoping for over the years to increase the viability of the community recycling centres are coming to fruition. One of them is the increase in the waste levy, which is increasing the cost of wasting, making resource recovery a cheaper option. You can come to a community recycling centre and not all of it has to go to the landfill. You can take stuff out and reduce the cost to the average person who visits. The other thing that the Ministry for the Environment is working on at the moment is the product stewardship schemes. And that's where we see there's a lot of potential for the community recycling centres to earn income, in particular for the container return scheme, which is going to need infrastructure for drop-off. And those drop-off sites will actually get a handling fee, and that's quite considerable amount of money that they can generate to help offset costs. So I guess we're seeing that a lot of the work that's going on at a national level is going to increase the financial viability of these sites. So it's positive as we go forward. And I should say that the ongoing operational costs that we are seeking are not for the full amount. They're still starting at the higher level and coming right down. I think some of the earlier sites that we've got running now, they're probably only about 20% of what they originally got in their management fee.
A couple more questions. The initial contracts were for the 5-year period. At para 36, you're talking about the ongoing site management fee from council be required beyond the initial 5 years. For how long? It doesn't say in the report.
Yeah,
so
we're beginning to look at the option of 10-year contracts for operators who have the capacity to enter into those kind of length of contracts. And a big part of that is that they can actually get the investment they require to set up viable businesses. 5 years is hard for them to actually invest in equipment and that sort of thing.
One final question, because if there were to be a resource transfer, recovery and transfer station in the south, which I support, I mean, I'm just looking at the waste management tariffs for Inlet Road, which is private, versus the Waiuku Centre, by way of example. So general waste management 47, Waiuku 43, green waste management 41, Waiuku 30, bag general 11 versus 6, and garden waste bag 12 versus $8.50. So if we're setting up these sites, these parks, are we able to sustain a level of gate tariff which is significantly under where waste management or another private provider can be in order to make these sites more affordable at the gate?
I think one of the, there's a couple of things in this. One of the things obviously we're aiming to do is divert as much waste from landfill as possible. And I think if you went to if residents go to a standard transfer station with a trailer or load of material, that would be accepted. You know, your $47 to landfill, off it goes. Coming to a community recycling centre, that same trailer load of goods, they'd be encouraged to say, well, look, you know, these items are reusable, we'll take these off and there's no charge for that. These are recyclable, we don't need to charge for that. To reduce the amount that's actually being sent to landfill, but also the costs associated with disposal. That's one of the key areas that waste costs can be brought down, and that active pulling out things that actually don't need to go to landfill in the first instance.
I can do that at waste management too, though. I can drive to the left and divert.
There's a wider range. Because the community recycling centres are set up to actually divert from landfill, they'll be putting a lot more effort into that. They don't have the incentive to take waste to landfill. That's not part of their business model. So the setup is different and the incentives are different. The current sites are diverting, some of them 70% of what comes into the gate, which is a very high amount, and they're increasing that all the time.
One final question is a resource recovery park an option here, or is it just community recycling centres?
Definitely, in the plan we've got 2 resource recovery parks, which we've got. One of them is we definitely want one in the south. And that's a large site with the ability to cater for local residents, but also commercial waste. And it is something that we're very keen on getting something set up.
And for equity purposes,
Yes.
I would assume to also be affordable at the gate.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Thank you, Councillor Newman. Councillor Filipaina.
Thank you, Chair. Tēnā kōrua, ladies. Look, just 2 very quick questions. The south location for the recycling centre, where's that?
The Resource Recovery Park.
No, the recycling
The
centre.
Community Recycling Centre. It'll be on the around the Otara, the border with the Otara Howick area. Yeah.
The resource recovery park. Is that better? Okay. The resource recovery park. Just the process in regards to that in the south as well. Just what is the process? I know there's going to be consultation with our CCOs, but is there any other process that we end up going through with the community, with the local boards, with councillors in this particular area? And I'm not saying the local board area, but the councillors within the south, because it will be an impact for all our areas out there. So just that last question, Chair.
There'll definitely be a process. So we're just in the very early stages of trying to articulate what what the Resource Recovery Park would be and what. So we're starting an early business case to get kind of flesh out what that could be. But in terms of taking it forward and in terms of looking for land, there'll be a huge amount of consultation and engagement with community, local boards, councillors, Māori and mana whenua.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Member Wilson.
Tēnā kōrua. Thank you very much for the opportunity, Jenny, through yourself, to moot some questions, so not blocking them all up here. I appreciate that very much, and hopefully that will mean less of me mooting questions. But I keep flicking through here, and it's probably annoying the 2 beside me, in that I'm trying to match the recommendations as my first question. Actually, almost goes to Councillor Newman's around the financial implications. So the resolution, one of them says, note the funding to deliver the revised strategy is being sought. Now, and I'm looking at the strategy and I'm not understanding necessarily where the funding's, what part of the strategy is intended to be funded. So it's not clear. There's a whole range of things around challenges, opportunities, resource recovery parks. Even though there's a financial implications section here, it doesn't necessarily talk to figures. So does it mean it's a lot wider than that? How is that mooted? And that's my first question. And I've just got a couple of follow-up if I can, please.
So the finances will be to support the existing community recycling centres with a ongoing management fee, and then it'll be to establish a further 9 community recycling centres with both capital budget and operational budget, and also for the resource recovery park, but that's just capital budget, not operational budget.
Thank you. I could see Parole coming up here, so
You might want
I
to-
think she was
yeah.
looking at answering part of that, because my follow-on question would be, if it's not specific, note the funding to deliver the revised strategy, but it actually doesn't talk about the recovery parks and the like, Parole.
Yeah, Kia ora, through the chair, what Jenny mentioned, we are specifically asking for just over $10 million over 10 years for the operational support for the sites that are coming on. So that is what's gone into the long-term plan package through the Mayor's proposal. So it talks about expansion of the sites that we've got currently, and it talks about having capital funding through the waste levy allocated for those sites as well. So that is what is being sought through the long-term plan.
So it's more, is the recommendation sufficiently clear, I guess, through the chair, to indicate what you're talking about here? Because it says to deliver the revised strategy, but doesn't talk to the nature of what you're talking to. The paper describes the financial implications, but I think it can be done through you, Mr. Chair, but it's not specific through the recommendation small b, that's what it's intended to do. So that's my first comment. The other question I was going to moot was as a result of the feedback that was received from earlier in the presentations from the local board, and it was around how do you decide where to? How do you decide where the location would be? And as I've already canvassed with you offline here,
Yeah.
Jenny, my concern would be, are you providing, whether it's a park or a recycling centre, that is the want and the need of the community, including mana whenua? How are you gauging that you're hitting the mark for the community and or mana whenua, so you know whether it is a recycling centre or you know that it is a recovery park?
Thanks for that. I think, first of all, through our waste management and minimisation plan engagement in 2018, 70 to 80%, we had, I think, around 80% support for the development of community recycling centres and the resource recovery network in terms of submissions that were received from the public. And in terms of when we develop new sites, so our two new sites have been in Onehunga and Western Springs, and both those have gone through a process where we, right from the beginning, have invited community, mana whenua and local Māori organisations in to be part of the discussion and the design. And through that process, we've got feedback and we've got a lot of excitement and input from local community into both of those designs. So what for me was really interesting in Onehunga, we had a number of community organisations and some of those Māori-led organisations coming to the meetings who didn't know what a community recycling centre was, but through that process have become excited, are upskilling themselves, and we have a capacity building program as well, and are also really keen to consider whether they want to be operators of that centre. We've also had the local schools who've really, some of the teachers came to our design workshops and have now taken that back through the schools and are engaging with their with their schools in terms of what a community recycling centre could look like and what it could do and how it could relate to their local area. And so I think that process, because you're right, it is building the understanding of what it is, and but also what are the local opportunities and how can it work in a ways that work for that local community, including with Māori and mana whenua. And so no two community recycling centres will be the same because they are embedded in their local communities.
Just adding to that, Mr. Chair, as well, the other thing is we are also driven by where the sites are. So a lot of what we do is in terms of the resource recovery parks, for example, what we've looked at is what is the size of the region, what would be the optimal way of positioning those sites, and what is actually available. So Waitakere is being one because we've got that site, it is an operation that we run and we know we can do it within budget and there is capacity doing it there. The one in the south has taken longer because of the size that we are looking at is really huge. And when we've seen opportunities come through the CCOs, we're exploring whether those parcels of land are appropriate or not. So I guess, and we had the opportunity to have a conversation with you at one point to say, what would it make sense to have this land deliver on what's needed? So I guess what I'm trying to say there is that we understand the size of the region, we understand the number that we might require. We then also look at what opportunities do we have with current land parcels that we've got, because we have to make it affordable as well. And then we test it with, in terms of what is the community out there, and what would that site look like to deliver on the needs of that community. So it's a complex way of doing it, but however, it is based on a few things that we need to look at.
So just lastly, I forgot to do the good first, said I went the not so good. I absolutely acknowledge, and that was through the helpful kōrero with you, Jenny, that the excitement around those centres and the parks, my question was more on ensuring that they are not fit for purpose, because that's too broad a stretch, that they are what the community and or mana whenua and mātāwaka are looking for, and not what we think is best for them. So that would require the local board, I guess, and mana whenua to make sure that complements each other. So I'm happy in that regard and look for, but I still, through you, Mr. Chair, looking at that recommendation, is there any way that can be honed somewhat?
I'll just maybe ask Parul, because I asked Parul to add the B, because this we don't have delegation to make financial decisions, and because of the last 6 months of work with Alex's team and Parul's team and everyone to work with the mayoral budget to get that funding, those funding lines in, I was trying to tie the fact that, because often we pass plans all over the council that don't have a budget, and I think I was trying to acknowledge that actually for this issue, there is a different body of work going on for that funding. I'm not sure if we can or we should acknowledge the funding in here. We could add words. What would you?
We're wanting endorsement on the strategy in terms of the direction that we've put forward and the details that are in there. And I think B is just noting that the budget is available through the long-term plan, and it is subject to that getting through. So I guess the question then is, what if the money doesn't go through, then what would happen? So this is saying, yes, you are okay with what's been put in here, and the money is targeted in the LTP, but it is subject to that going through.
Yeah, so it's that component. The other part is the revised strategy, to deliver the revised strategy, and there's no plan as such, it's just a strategy, and you could pick any one of those components to say that you want funding on that, and you've decided you want funding. So normally, I guess, if you're looking potentially for funding, even though you don't understand what that funding is, it's for a specific purpose or part of the strategy, not to deliver the strategy. That's the other concern.
So I believe it could actually specifically mention the money that we are looking for in the long-term plan for the operational of the facility.
So is it just the 10.8 and the 29.8?
Yeah.
Would we put? Okay. So we could add under B. Yeah. Note that funding to deliver. Would we? All right. Yeah, it was.
It could pick up words from point 9, I guess, para 9.
Yeah. No, I think.
This is on the strategy.
I think they're inflated.
Those numbers right, or which are the numbers?
The 10.8.
Which
Yeah.
one is it?
10.8 and 29.8. Or do you want for the 29.8, should we be mentioning that it's the, so the words are through the budget allocated to Auckland Council from the central government waste levy under the 29.8.
That just clarifies it that we're not seeking rates funding for the capex. It's actually to be done through the waste levy that council receives.
Maybe C should be, maybe the 29 should be a C. There'll be questions. We're just trying to finish up this one.
Amendment, isn't it?
No, it's not an amendment. It's just
But, well, actually, no, it's not because it's not moved.
I can move the item.
Difficult when you're doing questions and you leap into making. It's kind of.
Yes. Kia ora. Apologies, Councillor Cooper. I was just trying to follow up and finish the point. Otherwise, we'd have to come back to it. Councillor Collins.
Thanks, Chair. My Councillor Filipaina has asked my question about the site for South. So thanks for that. I'd be interested. This one, maybe we don't need to answer have answered here, but I'd be interested in your response to the Howick local board who asked about $50,000 that they've put aside for 5 or several years ago by Southern local boards, and I think that I'd be interested just to see what your response to them would be. The question I have is in relation to point 29, which relates to the Community and Social Innovation Team, formerly TSI, and the development of a business case to progress the South facility. I was just wondering if they're involved in the preparation of other business cases, given their very good work in relation to smart procurement and kind of local young people being involved as well.
We're just working with them in relation. Oh, sorry. We're just working with them in relation to the South Resource Recovery Park.
Yeah. So just on that, thanks, Chair. Don't look at me. I'll keep asking. Do you so that the approach that say CSI, formerly TSI, would take, is that the approach that we can take for granted whenever these sites are being considered and business cases are being worked out?
Yes, the answer is the answer is yes. In fact, we have been working with staff with TSI right from the beginning, really, to get their expertise. They've been very, very helpful with us.
Thank you, Councillor Cooper.
Thank you. It's really good. It's great that we're going to get more of these recovery centres. My question is around the certainty of the waste levy increases, because I know that it only went to Cabinet from Minister Sage in June, and then she was to come back with, she got a, you know, the minute says you go and draft the regulations, come back to us. But right at the end of it, it says, note that Cabinet will review the implementation dates outlined in paragraph and in light of the economic conditions at the time the Minister submits the regulations for approval. So given our uncertain times. So have you heard anything more? Because the last time I heard from the Ministry, it was going to go in November to Cabinet for gazetting in December. But I mean, the Minister wasn't the Minister then anymore. So I don't know where it's up to, whether it's actually happened. Because that makes a big difference on the amount of money. There's a whole lot of tables around how much money will be generated over the next 3 years. And if it starts late, that might affect our contribution that we get.
Through Mr. Chair, we've been working with the ministry officials quite closely. In fact, 2 of our staff have gone to the ministry to work on the waste levy regulations. So, which is good news because we know that they are hiring more people to do the analysis work and to put it together. I do believe they are running slightly behind because they were actually wanting to start off middle of this year, which may not happen, but they do have a good work program that they are working to. So there may be a delay in terms of when they get that off the ground. However, we do have a lot of work already in hand that we can get on with while that comes on board.
That was just one of my concerns because we're relying on that levy increasing and I know for a fact they didn't have enough staff working on this and it's just been a bit derailed. So I'm really glad that we're helping. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cooper. Mayor Goff.
Thank you very much. I just want to, my first question follows up from Councillor Fessel-Collins. The South Auckland Resource Recovery Park is being built into a wider concept of prosperity south and west. And it looks pretty exciting, 68 jobs and a model for generating some, quite a strong financial return. What I'm worried about, it's good that we're getting the one recovery centre in Otara Howick, but some of this might be commercially sensitive, so I'm picking my words carefully. You've had some challenge over the main site that you were looking at, and I just wondered, really important, this will be largely for Maori and Pacifica employment. I'm just wondering what your time frame is for the South Auckland Resource Recovery Park and whether you are persisting with your investigation of the current site, which is a big site of about 15 hectares, I think, or whether you're feeling that you have to look at another site, and if so, why? If it's commercially sensitive, just, say so, and say nothing. You will anyway.
I guess the work on the Resource Recovery Park for the South we've been working on for a long time, and I think it's always the issue we come up against is the land size. And I guess we have made some inroads in terms of what we might be looking at. And the business case that we are working on with CSI has been a really great opportunity, where we're also looking to pull in funding from the government as well. So I think we are making progress, but I would not be able to give you timelines right at the moment, but we can share them offline.
Because I know who the prospective vendor might be. If there's any way in which my office can help, I'm just offering that I'm really keen to get this up and off the ground and running. I think out in the south we've been waiting for this for a very long time, and it's frustrating to you and it's frustrating to us. My second question is really the location of the 9 news centres. We had a couple of presentations from really enthusiastic people in Upper Harbour and Hibiscus Coast and Bays, but I do notice from your map it's pretty clear where the big gaps are, and if you're talking about a network, you do want to cover the whole of the region. But I just wondered what your process will be for determining the location of those 9 extra sites.
I think there's a number of things that come into this. One of them is the feedback we've got from local boards, and that's come through very strongly for us. And obviously, we want to get more in the south. That's going to be one of the factors. The other one is finding the sites that are available, and we're always looking at, particularly the old transfer station sites. We've kind of run out of those. Where our aim is to try and locate them within around about a 30-minute kind of drive. So we're if you're looking at from location-wise, we're trying to fill in those gaps. But key thing is equity, so that people can actually get to them easily. It's not a straightforward process because there's all these factors coming into it. But for us, we're very aware of the fact that we haven't got not enough sites in the south, and that's going to be a big focus for us, our key focus really.
The approach we've taken for the one that we've got on the Otara Howick board area was to actually put an expression of interest out to see who were the players out there who might have land and who might come to the party, and that's how we secured that one. And that might be another way of going out to the market actually on different areas and saying who are the parties that might be interested, that might bring land to the mix. So once we've got your approval, we would look at doing that exercise and looking at the market once we know we have no land from our CCOs that can actually be in the mix.
Thank you. And if I may, through you, Mr. Chair, the last one was we had a pilot program operating together with Waste Solutions for the deconstruction and salvage of buildings. I think it was the TRO group we were working through. That was a pilot program. Is that now permanent, or what's happened to it?
I'm just wondering which one, because we do have one site that we've developed at the moment that is doing deconstruction of housing, not with the TRO group, but I can come back to you on that one. Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be good, because that was also employing a lot of people, and it is construction waste, and we all know that construction waste is a much bigger problem than domestic waste. Yep. Thank you.
Kia ora, thank you, Mayor Goff. Member Wilcox.
Thank you. A couple of questions. The first one was regarding to the stewardship scheme. Have we done any modelling as to how that would work, and would that change the modelling of what we're doing? First, that's the first one. And I suppose the same question can be related to this one. With the waste levy came that funding package. Would we be using trying to get access to some of that, and also would that then be changing this strategy? Because I mean, if we ended up with 100 million, I'm pretty sure we want to have more than 9.
I'll answer the first part about the product stewardship. We're really at the moment just waiting to see what the scheme design comes up with. The report has been completed and presented to the Minister, and so that's what we're waiting to see, because there's a number of different scheme designs. As a council, we have inputted into that and made it really clear that we want our community recycling centres to be a key part of the infrastructure in Auckland, and I think that's been kind of common from other councils around the country as well, that they want their community facilities to participate. But until that comes back, we can't really model too much. But as soon as we have a model, we will certainly be looking at how we could actually set our community recycling centres up to be a core part of it.
Yeah, in terms of the extra funding, government's also looking at an infrastructure plan that they're doing for the whole country, in terms of saying what are the gaps in terms of what are the facilities we need for recycling, for example. Do we do fibre or more of paper and cardboard on shore? What do we do with plastics? So they're looking at that as well. The money that we would get, definitely we would look at putting into more localized solutions, because we need to make it easier for people to be able to do recycling or do reuse or upcycling. So this strategy, as I think Jenny said in the beginning, is a framework. Going forward, if there is more funding available and the need is there, we would look at expanding it further. And there's definitely a desire within the local boards to grow local networks within certain communities. That would be stage 3, I would say, in terms of going to that level. But we need to develop and have really sustainable businesses running before we get to that stage.
I'll just make a comment. My concern is that we won't be sustainable until we do get some of that funding. Yeah. And so, it's all right for us to say, well, they're going to be operating at a profit next year, but actually they don't, locally or even together, they don't have the critical mass that somebody like Enviro Waste or Waste Management have in order to make it into a profitable exercise. So I think, we need to be careful with the sustainable corridor. Otherwise, because in 5 years, if the government hasn't changed anything, we're still talking sustainable from an economic point of view, which is really not going to cut the mustard. Thank you.
Councillor Newman, question.
Well, yeah, Chair, sort of goes back to my earlier point, but you've now included B Roman numeral 1. Really, what I want to know is spelling out that operational funding, a tranche of that funding is for the existing sites, centres, which are not financially sustainable at the end of their contract period, so there's continuing funding for a period of time. Extrapolating that out, do you know what proportion of the 10.8 is to continue to support and sustain those centres, because without it they're not sustainable?
Through you, Mr. Chair, on page 51, it gives the operational expenditure requirement table, which talks to that point. It's not broken down in terms of the facilities per se, but that gives you a flavor as to what are we asking for. I mean, we haven't put more detail in there because that's more operational, but that is the context in terms of what are we requiring.
And it will be my comment later on, Chair, but my sense is that these are not sustainable now and may not be sustainable in the future, which is fine. That just means that we have to build in a subsidy, and it's the scale of the subsidy for these increased number of sites that's the issue here.
Yeah, and that's what we've built in here. For the next 10 years, we've built in that subsidy for all the sites that we would have. I just wanted to mention that our arrangement with our partners is an open book policy, where we do work with the CRC operators in a way that if we see that they have other funding options coming through, we can look at reducing our share into it or our money going into it. So not every site has the same amount of contribution from council. There is quite a bit of variance because it depends on where the site is and what other income streams do they get, whether it's gate fee or other opportunities that can be done on the site. Hence the ability to actually say you've got your base operating cost is this much, how much money you're getting from others, what do you need from us? So it's almost of that nature.
And the markets issue has had a huge impact in the last 5 years from when the original contracts were signed.
Yeah, the commodity pricing falling has not helped them because earlier they could sell paper and cardboard, for example, to the market, which they can't now, and they're actually having to pay to get rid of that. So that situation hasn't helped their financials as well.
Kia ora. I've got Councillor Bartley question, Councillor Cooper question, then I have...
Sorry, I just wasn't sure where you were at because people keep commenting, and so when I put my hand up, there was comments going on, so I thought we were in comments, so I'm sorry. But if I can put my name down for comments.
Yeah, I have been asking questions. People do give comment. I try and be fair-ish, but I mean, I can be a bit stricter on it. But question, Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the presentation and for the work. I was on the local board when the report came through for, trying to find a recycling centre for our ward. So it's good to see the Onehunga one. I'm also part of a social enterprise that is trying to eliminate or, reduce what goes into the waste stream. But the issue there is the financial sustainability. A lot of these groups here have the best intentions, they're really into this waste recycling and stuff, but business-wise, they're not there. And so I share the same concerns that about financial sustainability and the need for more subsidy to keep these operations going. So my question is, what business support is there for these groups so that they actually can be successful businesses as well as reducing the waste stream? Because it's nice.
It's a really important. It's a really important part of the network, and sustainability of the business is key, and that's why we've been. That's why I guess there's a kind of limited number, because we have to make sure that they are financially viable. All of our operators actually belong to the Zero Waste Network, which is a national body of the community recyclers around the country, and they are providing a lot of the support to help these businesses become business-like, and to help them put their tenders together for the contracts that we put up. So when we go out for a contract with a new site, we actually are looking at the books basically for the next 5 to 7 years. And so we keep the open book process going so that we can work with them to make sure that they're not in a position where they might fall over. So they're getting technical support and financial support. We also are working with them on things like health and safety, making sure that we can share health and safety knowledge amongst all of them. So there's a kind of a mentoring set up with both technical and financial support as we go along. But it is, that's one of the things we've always been most conscious of. And I think all of our CRC operators are just really growing in their business-like approach. It's harder when you're not controlling, when you're doing small resource recovery initiatives. A community recycling centre has to encompass the whole basket and be sustainable.
Thank you. No more questions? Oh, no, sorry, Councillor Watson, last question, and then we'll go into speaking.
Yeah, thanks. And just following on that from the question of Councillor Bartley and the comments from Parole in terms of the expertise that may or may not be available and the differences of variability in as to which each centre is functioning in terms of the cost to council and their contribution to climate change goals and all the rest of it. So I see really great opportunities in the first instance to get to those parts of Auckland where there's nothing or very little. That makes sense, but also to grow the network, particularly in the places where there's an opportunity to leverage off expertise and good business practice that already exists that still have demand. So I think we had a couple of people from local boards here today who talked about Whangaproa way up here and Devonport way down there, and the bulk of people actually in the middle outside that 30-minute travel zone. So I guess my eventual question that's going to come out of this is, to what extent can we utilise these people that are often very passionate, are very cost sensitive, and increasingly, in respect of some of them, have contacts into other revenue sources via grants and whatnot? Is there more capacity than we've had thus far to really make the best of those people to grow the network, across Auckland and also even in the areas where theoretically that they already exist? Does that capacity exist?
Yes, absolutely, that capacity exists, and I think that's part and parcel too with going with a longer contract period. As if there's a longer contract period, then there's more opportunities to leverage external funding sources. And I just also want to make the point that some of the new and emerging community recycling centres have partnered with more experienced operators, and so that partnership has enabled a transfer of knowledge and skills over a period of time, and so that's been a really successful approach that's starting to emerge.
So Mr. Chair, I think you put all those factors together. I see this as a real opportunity, particularly in light of the overall context of today's meeting and addressing, climate change objectives, utilising the clear enthusiasm that exists with the local boards, most of the local boards, and the existing operators, some of whom are very proficient, who probably couldn't be too much better in terms of financial investment, and really growing this network for kind of very modest investment on our part.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Watson. I think that post the 10-year budget, once this is approved with the financials as well, I think it would be good to potentially have a workshop with us all to really drill into the individual, because there has been some really good questions, but of course, because this is a revised network, it can't get down into the detail, but I think, and some of the questions are commercially sensitive too, so it would be good if we could drill down a bit further and talk about the flexibility that this revised strategy might hold if there are other options, things to tag on. Maybe, there may be less in one area and more in other, who knows, but I think the questions are good, but I think a workshop after the budget's been approved would be good. Would be that work out, Councillor Watson? Cool, thank you. Now we will finish questions there. We'll go to Councillor Casey, I think first speaking turn all day, is it? Yes.
Did everybody see the headlines about the recycling centre at Western Springs just a couple of months ago? The fact it's going ahead? Yes. In the Herald and stuff all over the place, Radio New Zealand. No, you didn't, because there wasn't any. No. I want to talk about the elephant in the room, which is the actual abuse and the hard work that the staff have had to put into that particular recycling centre in Western Springs. Because the headlines just before the election were huge. It was about the council being unfair. It was about the council lacking transparency. It was about the council kicking out a group that had held tenancy for 30 years. We were none of those things. We weren't unfair, we weren't untransparent, and we certainly didn't kick out the Horticultural Council. But the staff had to front that issue over many, many months. And I don't mind doing that as a councillor. And I'd like to pay homage, first of all, to the staff. And you had Jenny, Jenny and Julie and Parul here today, looked over by Barry and Megan. They know what went on. Each one of them know what went on. To sit in a room where you are the bad guy simply because you are representing the policy that this council endorsed in 2014, which was to have a resource recovery network, and every councillor signed up to that. Now then, what happens 3 weeks out from an election, and I'm sorry he's not here, and it wasn't the councillor from my ward, but there is a councillor who stood in Aotea Square with the Horticultural Council that was having a protest about how bad the council was, and said that we were unfair, lacked transparency, and should be voted out at the next election. We need a new mayor and new councillors, and there were placards with names on them. If you sign up to a policy, and we've had a lovely in-service day, support it in all its aspects. If you have a problem or you think that things aren't being done the way you think they should, come and speak to the ward councillor or the local board. But do not campaign 3 weeks out from an election, because even though I love you all dearly, if you do that to me, I will still remember it. And I had the misfortune to watch the video again at lunchtime. Why? Because it's still on his Facebook page. The least you can do, if things turn out not the way you wanted, which was a new mayor and a new council, you didn't get that. And you also didn't get the resource recovery centres going ahead, and I don't know why you didn't want that. The least you can do is take it off your Facebook page. So that's an appeal to whoever's not in this room to do that, and it's not Chris Darby. So now I'll forgive you, Wayne, but it's actually... Well, it wasn't fair that he did that, John, to be honest, to stand in Aotea Square and say that, you know, we've done all this, right. So now that we have the Resource Recovery Centre going ahead at Western Springs, I'd like to pay homage to the 3 local boards that for the last decade have fought to get it, and the local board chairs. In Puki Tāpapa, it was Harry Doig and Julie Ferry. In Waitemata, it was Pippa Coombe, Shale Chambers, and now Richard Northey. And in Albert Eden, it was Peter Haynes and Margie Watson. Margie Watson over the last year has done a sterling job. We negotiated this. That's what our job is. If there are, we all have these head-to-head things, but it's our job is to actually help, not hinder. I'm sorry about that. I shouldn't have watched the video. You can strike all of that from the public record, but John, I'm sorry, it still hurts. You know, it's like.
Well, tell him, don't make the cameras off telling everyone else here. We had a meeting on
No, that's fine.
Councillor Cooper.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I absolutely support this. I think the staff have done a great job. We do have a plan, and there will be appeals by different boards for extras, etc. But I think we need to follow the plan first for the areas that need it the most, and make sure we've got a network. Because I've just done all the research on how far, people in, I live in the Albany ward. I live just over the border from Waitakere. And so I've done the research here. Even from Albany, it's under a half an hour, 25 minutes to Henderson, to a really great resource recovery centre. It's 23 minutes to Devonport and it's 22 minutes to Henderson, 23 minutes to Devonport, 25 minutes to Stanmore Bay. So I think it's great. Albany's got 3 within under half-hour drive. So I think it's well covered. But I think if we get all of these first, and then we can go to the next level, can't we? We can more fine-grain it, we can do stuff like that. But I really like us to stick to what we're doing. The conversations around sustainability, sometimes things aren't financially sustainable, just like our public transport. They're all subsidised, but they meet they meet some other objectives that we need to meet. You know, for example, the buses is our emission targets. You know, the more people on public transport, the less private cars. The more people that use resource recovery centres, the less need for us to buy land to bury junk in. So to me, if it's not sustained, can't stand on its own 2 feet, well, maybe that's the cost of meeting some other targets we need to meet. And hopefully the waste levy increase will get into the regulations and we'll start getting more money from the Waste Minimisation Fund so that we can be funding these more. And then the next level after our 21 that we've got, then next go to the next fine grain, you know, so that when we're trying to reduce car trips, that'll be the next level. So, you know, I do support these, but also I think we've got to think about if we've got high quality rubbish, take it to somewhere that is a needy area that might really love your high quality rubbish. You know, so I think there's some advantages in moving it around a bit for people who do have the money to pay for the petrol or whatever it is to get there. Whereas often in our other areas, those people don't get the high quality stuff in their resource recovery centres because the people who've got that aren't bringing it there. So that's just another advantage. So I really support this. Thanks for all the work done. And we haven't sent you away. We've just got a new policy that we don't leave you sitting at the table. So if we have a bit of a stoush, you're not involved and, you know, you've done your great job and we can just fight it out here amongst ourselves. So, so thank you for that. So I absolutely commend this revision. Thank you.
Kia ora. Thank you, Councillor Cooper. Councillor Newman.
I've kind of already addressed this, but look, thank you to the officers. I support where you're going, and Pearl, you've been so resilient in the face of my inquiries to you over the last 4 years. So thank you for that. My sense is that I want the resource recovery park in South Auckland. I also want the business model to be sustainable enough so that the gate fees are at or below what the gate fees are against the private operators. Because you're going to intervene in the market, you intervene hard. But anyway, so that's my pitch there. And the one other thing I would say about waste management side and Inlet Road is that it's not the gate fee, I think, that really drives their business. It's the commercial activities with those trucks coming and going. It's big contracts. So more power to your elbow, but I do think, through you, Chair, my expectation is that there will be, I actually think this budget is too skinny for the actual operating cost. And this will have to be addressed in a very short period of time through the annual plan revision, because you can't, if you're going to have one of these sites operating, they have to be able to be sustainable. And if they can't be sustainable through gate fees and other revenue sources, they'll have to be subsidised. And we will have to reflect that through a revision of our budget.
Thank you, Councillor Newman. Councillor Filipaina.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, for me, I'm about process. So in number 31 is the process that I want to make sure that follows in regard to this. I agree with Councillor Newman. I agree with those that look, hey, let's have that process around the recycling centre based at Otara, Howick area, but also the resource recovery park. And that is a process that still needs to be done. So I congratulate the staff, and also just wait for the process to be had to end up giving what they want to achieve through this agenda item. The achievements speak for themselves. The benefits are in the report. Now, His Worship the Mayor mentioned the Prosperity West and South report, and in number 29 of our report, which is a key thing for me, is that I believe the word could, it should be replaced with will. I know I'm not going to ask for that, because that sentence should read, a resource recovery park in the south will provide an opportunity for economic transformation led by Māori or Pacifica businesses, social enterprises and local businesses. It will. Based on that prosperity report that I've seen, and His Worship the Mayor has seen, it will benefit in regards to the stats around the unemployment in the west and in the south. You know, I look forward to them to both being brought to the fore and built and having the impact that it should have in regards to the report. So congratulations, ladies, and to the team. I just look forward to the consultation now and the processes that need to happen. So, Chair, for you, and I don't know whether I need to do this, but I'm going to say it, that I agree with the changes that you have up in the red there as part of now the substantive. Thank you.
Kia ora. Councillor Dalton.
Thank you, through the Chair. I too want to just thank very much Jenny and Parul in particular, back to you, for where we are today, because it has been a long and complex journey. And I've had to front some pretty grumpy local board chairs and local board members as we transition through different things like our inorganic changing, the pickups changing. And they have supported our local community groups like Talking Trash and the Pride Project to help educate our people towards recycling, knowing where to put their rubbish, not to dump their rubbish. It's an ongoing battle, of course, but without the support and your flexibility and your willingness, even down to the no sticker pilot in Weymouth, which was very kind of you to humour us on that. That didn't work. You were right, we were wrong. But thank you. Just everything that you're doing, it's not easy. Councillor Casey is right. You front some pretty difficult people and meetings. So congratulations. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Mulholland.
Thank you, Chair. I would also, and I'll speak through you, I also would like to acknowledge the staff, and having had worked at Waitakere City Council and was very proud of the time there, I'd like to acknowledge the officers, but especially it's lovely to see Jenny, and it brings back fond memories of good people and good work. So I haven't actually said anything today, so it's my one little thing. I just do want to acknowledge there's a lot of other staff and a lot of other people behind the teams that work together. And thank you, Councillor Casey, for information sharing. It's always good to have some background and knowledge so that I too can look up information and get a really clear picture of what people have said and what they've done. So, you know, I acknowledge that as well. And we all know, so Chair, I'm a real fan of the recycling centres. I bought my push bike through that. Surprise, surprise. And they do great work. And I remember the days of when you could get 5 cents, I think it was, for a bottle. So I didn't steal them in the neighbourhood, but, you know, they were great little cash builders. So thank you for the report. It was well written, and I absolutely support it. So kia ora tātou, yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Mulholland. Councillor Henderson.
Thanks, Chair. Look, I think I'm belying my Waitakere roots here a little because, frankly, and with respect, I have no idea what's so controversial about this. I'm not quite sure why we're taking so long on this item, frankly, because it's so obviously a good thing. It's a wonderful thing. I'd invite anyone to come down to Henderson and see the wonderful work they do in that centre. This is just brilliant, and it's a great report, it's a great resolution. Really proud and happy to support it, and I just want to thank staff for all of your work on this as well. While I have the floor, I just have a look at the map and where we're spreading things out, and I think if Councillor Mulholland agreed, I think FO or FO adjacent areas might be somewhere to have a look as well in terms of our additional resource. But quite apart from that, you look, it's great. Let's vote it through. Thanks.
Kia ora. Member Wilcox.
Thank you, Chair. So I suppose when I lived in the bush, there was nothing more pleasurable than taking the rubbish to the dump, fossicking around, and coming back with your treasures, and having a beer and a barbie afterwards. So in a way, these resource recovery centres are doing all that. You know, I go down there to the one in Helensville and drop off a few things, and there's whānau there, and we're having a chat and a talk, and no beers but a coffee, you know, and so you end up buying more junk and taking it home and saying, look what I found at the resource centre, you know, and it's the same at Waiuku. And so it really does serve a purpose, if not the financial one. And the purpose I wanted to kind of bring out about the financial model is that the reality is sometimes it's just one of the core businesses of council, rubbish rates and all that stuff. And so there's always a cost. But I think what I really want to point out for myself is that Māori have been at the forefront of a lot of our kaupapa with regards to the recycling and composting and kaupapa like that began. And I remember going to Papatūānuku and it was like, wow, look, all these people are doing all this stuff. And so I want to make sure that we're still there and that marae and all those kaupapa, like what happened at Papatūānuku, aren't kind of just thrown to the side and said, oh no, we've got another group coming here now. So I want to make sure that our communities are still really involved. And yeah, Councillor Henderson's right. Yeah, I can remember up in Henderson we were just wrapping our papers up and all of that kind of stuff and going down and doing that. I lived in Titirangi, but it's also a tribute to the staff. It's been a long journey, and it's never going to end. Like I said, it's a core component, and it's just going to keep going, because we always have to keep recycling and reusing. Otherwise, you know, the world will end eventually. No worries, ka pai.
Kia ora, Member Wilcox. I'll just, briefly, just once again, thank you to the staff. I know we continue to do that, but I know this team are passionate. I've seen you at the award ceremonies supporting the groups that you support in the waste space and the environmental space. And as Member Wilcox said, that you couldn't get a more core business, when people accuse us of not focusing on core business, than waste. And so what this does have all those other well-beings, the four well-beings in this space. It's improving our environment, it's financially sensible to work this way. There's culturally and socially the benefits from these recycling centres and the resource recovery parks will be huge for our communities. And I remember being on a local board and kind of doubting the zero waste message of how we could actually do it. And I think it's clear that there's a long way to go, but it's significant once you've got the ball rolling and the domino effect happening. We will get to zero waste, and we will continue to divert, 5,500 tonnes a year and growing of good things that people want to use and good things that people don't want to chuck away, and that we continue to create more landfill is just not a way for our future. It's not a way for our carbon emissions, and it's not a way for restoring the mode of Tāmaki and ensuring our water quality and everything else stays pure and clean, considering we don't want any more landfills near our waterways, etc. So thank you very much. All those in favour? Aye. Those opposed? No. Perfect. Thank you all. We have to have an extension of time, I'm sorry. Collins and seconder. Councillor Collins, sorry. Councillor Mulholland. All those in favour of an extension of time? Anyone against? Cool. Thank you. Sorry, I'm slurring my words at this point of the day. Debbie and Dave, thank you so much for waiting, and I'm sorry we've left it so long. And sorry I don't know your name.